Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sacred Democracy. So nice of you to join us. Today, we are doing Sacred Play with Chrissy Velez, the founder, the creator of the VibeRiseMovement. And the reason that we're doing Sacred Play is because we want to talk about building community. I don't want to ignore all the turmoil that is going on right now, and I don't want to ignore that people are very upset about what's going on in the country. But what really solves these problems that we are seeing is the building of community. And one of the ways we build community from the time we are very, very little is through playing together. And while we know that all of our disconnection has not been solved through improvements in the education system, that there is still a great deal of work to be done. When we look at starting at the very beginning, we have to look at starting with our children. We have to look at playing, and we have to look at keeping the child alive inside of ourselves. And it's that helps us to build the community that we need for our support and for our healing and for our coming together as one. While we have to acknowledge all the problems that separate us, we can never lose sight of the idea that we are one. And we can never lose sight of, while there are sad and terrible things going on, there are also beautiful and wonderful things going on. And it's where we choose to put our attention. Do we put it on the problem? Do we put it on the solution? That choice is extremely important. And that's a lot of what the VibeRiseMovement is about. So I'm very thrilled to welcome Chrissy. And Chrissy, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you started, why you started, and how your movement has morphed.
Morphed is the word. Thank you, Miss Maddi. I just want to say again, thank you for inviting me onto your show. This is very special. Your show is amazing. It's doing big things, and I'm excited that even though I'm not in New York physically, I'm able to still be a part of the extraordinary everything that you got going on up there. So
thank you.
Thank you. So the VibeRiseMovement, it started out in one way and has completely morphed. That was absolutely the perfect word. I spoke about it briefly last time you invited me on to your show. I spoke about how my mom got diagnosed in 2017 with rare and aggressive cancer, and she was given 6 months to live. So as devastating as this was, it didn't really seem to shake her spirit. She said, actually, cancer is taking my body, it's taking my life, it's not going to take my mind and my spirit. And she had this powerful perspective and about how we're blessed. We're blessed because we know, even though it's sad that she's dying and it's not something that we want to happen, she is so grateful that we as a family have this gift of knowing and that we get to plan for it together and talk about it, have these uncomfortable yet powerful conversations about her death. And that a lot of families are not having that. She even referenced 9/11 and all of the mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and everyone that woke up that day to go to work and did not know that they weren't coming home. So it was that seed that was planted. I mean, I have to be honest, it wasn't a great surprise that was my mother's position. That's kind of how she raised my sister and I. So, but it was in that moment that I realized I didn't think a lot of families were having conversations like this. I think that it would be really neat to share that with the world, look, even when you're faced with the most horrific thing, you still have a choice. We can't choose always what happens to us and the circumstances. And sometimes it's just really, really bad, but we can always have a choice on how we want to respond.
Yep.
So with that, I created the VibeRiseMovement, and it started out a year and a half ago as the power of perspective. And we started having conversations in the community with, how we deal with things. How are you dealing with life? What are your tools in your toolbox for navigating through life? And we started getting together in sisterhood circles or in just community circles. We even started having conversations after drum circles and people would share their stories of woe and of triumph. And we were kind of story swapping there about how we were keeping ourselves afloat. And about a year later, I realized that the power wasn't just the conversation, but the conversation was happening because we got together. So it was back in the retreat in this past February with you, Maddi. It was in the retreat in New Mexico, which we could talk about, that we were doing a journeying, and I had this vision. And when I came back from the retreat, I changed the VibeRiseMovement. So it's not just about the power of positive perspective, or those are the roots, but it's actually an invitation to society to come together in unity with music and movement and love, and to kind of remember that oneness and do it in activities. Everything's nonprofit. I don't take a dime from the community. We just get together. So on Mother's Day, we did a community drum circle, which was over 30 people. And then yesterday we did a nature walk, and which was about a dozen people. And we're coming together to play. And then we end up kind of letting our guard down during that play and feeling that raise of vibration, that uplifting everything. And then all of a sudden we start talking more and more and more. And sometimes the conversations are very serious and sometimes they're lighthearted, but the intent is always the same. And that is to support each other.
And that is also to find that place where we do come together as one. And that is a very spiritual place. This division that we're seeing throughout the world, this to me and to many others is a battle that's happening on the spiritual plane without addressing the spiritual and energetic sources of what's going on. We're just going to continue to feed into it. So when we do come together and do things like drum circles or talking circles, where we are honest with each other, but where we start out by singing together and playing together. You know, the idea of the friendship song in Native America, it doesn't use words. It doesn't use translatable words. The friendship songs are all done with what's called vocables. And vocables are sound syllables that allow people who speak different languages to sing together. Wow. It doesn't matter if you're from that tribe or that country or wherever you are from is irrelevant, because when we are singing together or drumming together or making music together, we are friends. And when we start from that position of being friends, then we can move on to some real solutions about whatever problems it is we're facing. We can move on to really supporting each other. So I was kind of sad today. I got a message from our friend Tal Mendelbaum, who was on the show last week from Israel, who's very much into Kabbalah and the whole idea of connection and oneness. And that's what she talks about. Her website is Courage to Connect. And she's been getting a lot of backlash lately because the idea, and I've gotten this before in the past myself, this idea of oneness, they say, does not honor other people's pain and other people's tragedy and other people's suffering. And actually, to my way of thinking, call me crazy, but that is where we have some oneness. We all suffer. We all have tragedy in our lives. Your mother passed away after suffering from cancer. My mother passed away after suffering from ALS. So the idea of recognizing these sometimes very difficult places that we come from as a very human place is something that will bring us together, and that does bring us closer to where we are raising our vibration, where we are coming more in touch with that higher consciousness, because it's only that higher consciousness of love and respect that's going to connect us. And how better than to express it through playful ways, through joyful ways. So,
yeah. I am not blind to the current state of the world. I'm very informed. not good. Not good. This is really bad. There's things going on that are it's not okay. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just as devastated. I'm just as shocked. I'm just as confused. I'm just as angry. I don't know. I want to do something and I don't know what to do. And I'm
what you're doing.
Well, that's it. Like, I don't know what to do, but it's like, I know that I can reach out to the community and say, you know, come play with me or come hang out with me. And at these events, there is a variety of different cultures, a variety of different backgrounds, different races, different political views, different religions.
Exactly.
And we're all saying it's okay. It's okay. Like it almost just becomes, for that brief moment, for that brief hour or 2 hours or whatever we're doing, however we're dancing or we're drumming or we're playing kickball, whatever event is happening, it's like we get to feel that oneness. And just, even if it's so brief, I mean, there's children there, there's parents there, there's grandparents there, and everybody's connected and everybody's different. We look different, we speak different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I feel like I can do right now.
It's a big thing to do.
It doesn't feel like enough.
This is what it is. That's where you can't let the people, the naysayers, get in there, you know, because energetically, there's a man named Dr. David Hawkins. I refer to him a lot. He wrote a book called Power versus Force. And I've quoted him several times on here. And Power versus Force is based on his study, over 25 years of study, of how the human body reacts kinesiologically. And I think that's the word. And
it sounds great. Just going.
So he studied, you know, how does the human body react when it sees a picture of Hitler? How does the human body react when it sees a picture of Abraham Lincoln? How does it react to the words thank you? How does it react to the words I hate you? How does it react to the words I love you? How does it react to a picture of Gandhi? You know, I mean, he spent 25 years scientifically studying this. And what he showed is that when we are functioning below, he numbers all of our emotions going from like 0 all the way up to 1,000. And at 1,000, he puts Jesus, and just below Jesus, he's got Buddha just a little bit below. So if we're looking at people as role models, right? Then there's Gandhi's way up there, and I don't remember, but those three will do, right? So when he looks at people who are exponentially powerful, Gandhi brought down the British Empire. Jesus created a new way of looking at the world, and a new, he wasn't a Christian, but he created a spirituality, or he brought to the world a spirituality of love. And when we look at these people, their vibration is functioning at so high a level that one person can achieve far more than the person that is functioning way down at fear and anger and resentment. And he actually puts the break-even point at 200 at courage. So you have to have the courage to let go of certain things like fear and anger and resentment and hatred before you can take that step into raising, as you love to call it, as we all do, us hippies, vibration to the level of where we can bring peace to the world. It is not going to happen in all this violence. It will never happen with violence. That will never achieve it. And when we look at studies that have been done on peace versus violence, you see, I mean, there are a lot of people that want to deny this today, but the studies are very clear. Far more impact from peaceful protests than violent protests. Far more impact from bringing people together and talking than from keeping us separated and not listening to each other. Tal added in, Yes, Maddie, I just want to read her comment. She's listening to us. Yes, Maddie, and only this higher consciousness can heal the divides, the racism and the pain. Speaking about oneness is being part of the solution. And that's absolutely what you're doing, Chrissy, is we have to create more of these situations where people can come together. And I was very impressed. Our friend Marianne posted today. She was at the protest for racial justice in Babylon, which is a tiny little town on Long Island. And there were lots of people there. There was no violence. Everybody was calm. They were carrying their signs. They showed up with their masks. They were conscious. It was a beautiful day. So in some ways, we have to also be very clear that if there could be people coming in from the outside that don't want this to happen, if we look at this on a spiritual level and we look at that human evolution is dependent upon this oneness, the people that profit from a lack of oneness are not going to like it. And they're going to do everything they can to keep us divided. So it becomes vitally important that people like you and like me continue to do these things. And Tal added into you, we are experiencing different crises right now, and we should view them as the labor pains nearing us towards our birth into a new world of oneness and higher consciousness.
That would be something.
Yeah, and you just have to, what you are doing with bringing play and joy and fun to people is not only a necessary relief from the whole pandemic situation. Now that we are a little more open, we can do our gatherings,
Yeah, well, in North Carolina, we're at phase 2, almost creeping into phase 3. So I know you're in New York. You guys, I think, are a step behind.
Yeah, we're like at phase 1.
More leeway to get together now. So I really kind of stepped it into high gear the last few weeks.
Wonderful. And you should keep doing that, because energetically, spiritually, vibrationally, what you are doing is expanding. And there will be people that want to come down on you. I know there were some comments about what are you doing, sacred play, all this horrible stuff's going. That's why we're doing sacred play.
Yeah, I mean, I want people to know that they're safe with me. That's what I want people to know. Mm-hmm. That it doesn't matter for me. I could only speak for me.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you voted for, or your background, or your color, or your shape, or your practice and religion, which religion you practice, or how much money you make or don't, or it just doesn't, you're safe with me. You're safe to sit next to me. And that's what I stand for. And I don't know how to say it louder than literally putting myself on social media to a community. I think Facebook page has 3,000, 4,000 followers in just a year. And I'm putting, talk about vulnerable, putting myself there and say, come sit with me, come play, come do kickball, come do this, come. And I don't know what else to do other than that. And then maybe plant that seed for somebody else, maybe somebody else, maybe that'll ripple effect. And there's always naysayers. I mean, I remember before I really dove into the nonprofit activity part, and it was just kind of being born and being about positive perspective, I was getting slammed, man, left, right, and sideways. People are like, oh, your positivity's toxic. You're just, it's too much happy is a bad thing. And I'm like, what? What? I don't.
No, that's what Buddha said. Buddha and the Dalai Lama. The meaning of life is to be happy. We are not here to be miserable. That is not why we were here. And if you remain in connection with people, then your happiness level raises. And if you do happy things, I really believe that where it says in the Bible, and the little children shall lead them, that it's also getting in touch with that little innocent child inside of you. And that's what play and music and dance does. And
especially as an adult, we forget we forget. It's like amnesia. And I've seen it. I mean, I've literally seen, like, so we'll be at the park, for example, and I'll put it out there and as a flyer or whatnot, and people will come and we'll start, drumming, for example. And then there'll be just families walking by not knowing about the event and kind of just like looking, and their kids are kind of tiptoeing closer. They want to see what's going on. And I wave them over, come over. And the parents will be like, go ahead, to the child, go ahead. And I'm going, no, you too. And they first take their seat and you can see the uncertainty and they're just kind of like, okay, I'm here for my kid. Give it 5-10 minutes. Next thing you know, they're shaking the maracas, they're playing on the drum. They're like, hey, you want to trade instruments? And all of a sudden there's this glow within the adult. And they forgot that they're there for their kid and they're playing with us. And it's so neat. It's just so neat.
It's beautiful. We used to have a gentleman who led a drum circle here, and we used to go every week. It was every week he played the djembe, and he taught all of us to play. It was part teaching and part just playing, and you just felt so good at the end of that. And I remember one night there was, and it was a very diverse group of people, but I remember one night from across the street, this little girl came running out in her pajamas with like her parents running after. She should have been more than maybe 7 years old, right? And she just wanted to play. And Jerome would always bring a whole bunch of drums. So he, of course, had a drum. He gave her that drum. She started to play. We started to play better. This child went into a place, everything he played, she played beautifully, but she closed her eyes and she was beating. And here's this little white girl being taught by this older black gentleman and his black wife in a group of different colors of people. And she's just as connected with us and the universe as I have ever seen anyone be.
Well, we're afraid.
Ceremony.
The thing is, she had no fear. She didn't sit in the circle and go, well, what if I can't play? And adults do that. They'll sit down. They're like, well, I don't know how to play the drums. And I was like, well, me neither. Because we're so afraid. We're afraid of each other. And obviously with the state of the world, with good reason to be afraid of each other. But people don't have to be afraid of me. And if you're sitting in my circle, then, you don't have to be afraid of that person or that person. It's just not, there's just no judgment. It's zero.
And you can be aware of what's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
I really feel a little bit sad because I feel on some level, younger people might be uneducated in history. I mean, if you really study things like history and philosophy and comparative religion, you see that ever since there have been human beings, we have been going through these struggles. We have been doing some things right, and we have been doing some things wrong. And we have been searching for how to correct and find solutions to the things we continually do wrong and things that hurt other people. And so when we accept the idea of doing no harm, of not harming another human being, but instead trying to bring another human being happiness and joy and acceptance and belonging, we are doing the best that we can do sometimes. We don't control armies. We don't control governments, but we may on an energetic level. And we cannot deny what we know, because we know that if you are feeding into the hatred and the violence, if you are justifying it, you are on the same energetic level that the people you are upset with are. It's the same level. It's that same lower level that Dr. Hawkins describes. It's that level. It's so ego indulgent, you know.
Well, it's this, it's like when we talked about, the toxic positivity. It's not good to be unhappy it's not good to be happy all the time. Okay, but if I'm not happy all the time, I'm a human being. I'm having a full-blown Gemini human experience where I feel all the emotions, right? But it's just a matter of my choices when I'm in, what am I choosing? When I'm feeling anger, what am I choosing? What am I choosing to say? What am I choosing to do, not say? What are my resources? How am I walking myself out of this or through this? What do I have to face? Say jealousy, insecurities, fear. I mean, I feel all the things, but what am I doing or not doing? You know, and that's choices. We have choices. It's not that we are blind to human scale emotions or blind to struggle or tragedy or injustice, but what are we doing for it individually? Like, what do you? I know for me personally, you know, there are times that I've caught myself judging. It could be, you know, my best girlfriend, and she does something that may not resonate, right? You don't really get it. So you want to like judge, quick, like, what is she doing? And you catch yourself. I would catch myself. And for me to combat judgment, what I would start to do is I would trade judgment for curiosity. And I think you planted that seed for me. And I would start to ask questions. And I'd say, okay, wait, I have questions. And I would ask her and want to understand her way of thinking. It's irrelevant whether I agree or disagree. It's none of my business. But just to understand, to have a mutual, powerful, maybe uncomfortable, but powerful conversation. And it helps eliminate some of that judgment or that fear or whatever you got going on. And that's how you stay happy all the time.
Well, and that's just it. Because really that term, you know, people think of happiness like, like that.
Like you're like oblivious, and that's not it.
And it's not it. And even the original term, going back to the Greek, the term happiness actually comes from a word that doesn't mean like it means flourishing. And the idea, and that's how the Dalai Lama uses it, Buddha, Jesus, it's the idea that we allow each other to flourish in the world. We cannot do that while we're screaming and yelling at each other. We cannot do that in a state of anger and hatred and violence. That cannot be achieved. So the idea that we should always be and remain in that very unhappy state, in that state that does not allow us to thrive, is ridiculous. So in order to stay in touch with that which does allow us to thrive, we have ceremony, we have drumming circles, we have playing together, we have laughing and being silly and acting like a child. We have Tom Porter's teaching from the Haudenosaunee of the only thing that the Creator requires is that we be thankful every day, and at least 4 times a day we smile ear to ear so that all our teeth are showing, is how the Haudenosaunee say, so that the Creator knows that we're joyful, that we're happy to be here. I was reading through a book this morning by my Cheyenne sister, Dr. Henrietta Mann, who wrote a book called On the Spirit Walk. And she has a whole piece in there on social justice. And she talks about, and as we all well know, nobody on the planet have been the victims of more social injustice than Native Americans. So, you know, my dad always used to say that our background religiously is Jewish, that you know, Jews have been suffering at the hands of injustice for a long time, but no one has suffered more than the Native Americans. So she writes in that book, so how did we solve it? She writes about what were their methods for dealing with injustice, and their methods were very simple. You gather everybody together. You start with a prayer. You start with a song. And then you go from there, from that ceremony, you hold the talking stick. And then you pass the talking stick, and each person gets to say their piece. And well, you know, you've been in this kind of circle.
I literally have my talking
stick
literally next to the laptop, show and tell on your show today.
Yay. That's our talking sticks we made.
I just thought it was hilarious. I'm like, I'm literally looking at the talking stick.
Right. And the idea is that it is conflict resolution, that we can only resolve these very deep problems that we have with each other if we are willing to make the first step to peace, which is to sit in the circle, and then make the second step to actually listen to each other, to actually hear the grievance that somebody else has.
And that's what it is. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to sit next to me and be of love and peace. I can't force love and peace into another being. If I could, I'd run around and do it all day. I don't know how to do it. I just don't know. I know how to do it within me. I can only be in control of me. So I know when I'm coming from a place of peace and of love and justice and community. So
right.
All I can do is just extend that invitation. So do you want to do it too? Do you want to sit next to me and be of love and peace and equality? And maybe we'll, bang on a drum or dance or, too. But do you want to sit next to me and be from that space with me? And that's all I'm doing in saying, do you want to? And some people come and sit next to me and some people don't. I only know how to work from the inside out.
Exactly. That's the only way we can work. That's the real way to do the work. And it doesn't mean that we're ignoring the many injustices in the world that have gone on for a very long time. It means that we have to go to a place where we can solve these injustices. When people say violence solves nothing, it solves nothing. If we look at the cycle that human beings have been on with war and revolution and violence, and nothing solves nothing. So when we look at cultures like the Haudenosaunee that came to live in peace, how did they do this? They persevered over 40 years, and they had a great leader, the peacemaker, who would be right up there at 1,000 if Dr. Hawkins knew about him, but who was totally devoted to his people and who spent the time, made the sacrifices, and then brought the people together so that they could listen to each other, which leads to forgiveness, which leads to peace. So when you do these circles, when we play these games together, when you watch children playing on a playground and give them the opportunity to resolve their differences, they will. They truly will. But you have to allow them that space, and we have to allow ourselves that space. And that space happens in play and music and dance. And that space that we create where we promise you'll be safe, we promise you'll be loved, we promise you will be listened to. Once people start trusting each other, then we can say, okay, because there is that space we have to get to where we look at governments and say, you're not serving our needs and you're not listening to us. And right now we have many governments throughout the world that are only serving their own needs, that benefit from keeping us divided. And when we buy into that, we cannot come to the truth. When we sing and dance and are joyful together with somebody who might otherwise be an enemy, when we sit and listen to each other and talk together, then we can find a solution. There is no other way. It's foolish to think there's another way.
It's powerful. I mean, compared to the global events, it's small. But
no. I beg to differ with you.
Wrong on my show. You're wrong on my
Sorry, I don't know. Excuse me.
Okay.
I think that conclusion is incorrect. It's not a small thing to ask people to come together, especially at a time when there are many vested interests trying to keep us apart, trying to set up school systems where kids are only going together for like half a day. And staring at a screen for the other half of the day.
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast. But to see it, I see it even in women. I've attended several women's circles, thanks to you introducing them into my life. But I've attended them in New York, in North Carolina, in New Mexico. And I've seen it. I've seen circles come together and the women don't know each other. This friend brought this friend and this friend brought this friend and they don't know each other. And you can feel it energetically. If you're empathic to energy, you can feel it. And you can see it in body language, facial expressions. You see the uncertainty and the fear of being judged, criticize. They don't know really what to say. They're quiet. You pass the stick around. They kind of say their name and throw the stick to the next person, and they're not opening up. And then, 45, 50 minutes later, all of a sudden, their heart has opened, and they're sharing stories, and there's tears and there's smiles, and then they're exchanging phone numbers or social media, whatever. And next thing you know, they're friends, and they're going out, 2 weekends from then, you see them on Facebook together, going out to the beach, and you're like, oh my God, look at that. We went from fear to friendship.
Yep.
In 1 hour. And that's all I want to do. I want to be a connector. That's all I want to do.
Right. Exactly. And that knowing that you feel in circle, in ceremony, that knowing that something has shifted, something is different here energetically in this space at this time is a very ancient knowing, and we're all capable of that. We just have to invite each other into that circle. We have to believe that it's possible, and we have to invite each other in, just like what you're doing. And when we make that invitation, when the other person agrees to come in, it's like you said, we let them go through their own pacing. We let them come to their own experience of the circle. It's very, I've talked about this several times too, and I probably talked about it at the retreat. I remember my husband Bob, telling me about his first interview he ever did with his grandpa chief, Oliver Pattipony. And he talks about how when he interviewed Oliver Pattipony, he wanted to know all about the Comanche spirituality, right? He wanted him to tell him all about it. And he would ask him, all right, so what do you believe in? And Oliver would describe a ceremony. And he'd go, well, okay, all right, so that's nice. So now, but I mean, what is your spiritual belief? And then his grandpa chief would describe another ceremony. And after a while, it occurred to Bob finally that what he is saying is, I can't tell you what your experience in a circle, in a ceremony is going to be. I can't tell you what that will be for you. I can only put you in that ceremony, put you in that circle, bring you to that gathering. And then from there, that experience is between you and the creator. I wouldn't presume to take that away from you. And that's why, I mean, down through the ages, every philosopher, whether they're religious, spiritual or not, has always said, always, the only way to truly learn something is through experience. You have to have the experience.
Space for that person to have that experience.
Exactly.
To hold a non-judgmental space there. Even if you don't understand or you don't agree or it doesn't resonate or you can't relate, hold space for them. Listen, and feel that soul to soul, human being to human being moment. Yep. It's so simple. I don't understand why.
Well, because I think
more.
We live at a very difficult time, and it's not just the pandemic, and it's not just the racial injustice. It is a time where there are people in power who control the media and control governments who are deliberately keeping us divided because they don't want to let go of that. They don't want to let go of their power and their control. And so we have to be smart enough to say, you're not the one in power. You have no power. That real power doesn't come from the things that you are doing. That real power lies in the infinity and largesse of existence. And you only get to that place of knowing what that is when you are sitting with other people in a loving and a kind and a compassionate way. There's no replacement for compassionate. We have to get to that place where we are compassionate with each other, and then we solve our problems. And we can't get there by fighting and yelling and justifying. you know, it's not going to get there by that. It only gets there through listening with a loving heart and a loving mind.
I think that I have to come to New York, Maddi, and that we have to have a Vibe Rise movement.
We are.
Yes. Together. I mean, obviously, this is what the next step. We need to do.
As soon as my state lets me leave and your state lets you come in.
I know, they would stop me at the border, the GW. They would say,
I know. No. Nope. I know.
Yeah.
But it'll happen.
I have to collaborate.
It'll be there, and we'll keep talking about it, and we'll keep sending out our loving vibes to each other. And I
want to invite your listeners to check it out, to go on Facebook on the Vibe Rise Movement page and like it. And we have an Instagram too, at Vibe Rise Movement. And I want them to get involved and share things, post things, ask questions if you have questions. I mean,
absolutely.
I know the events are happening now here in Jacksonville, North Carolina, but there have been about 3 or 4 women in the last 6 months that have lived in different states, one being in New York, and actually asked me if they could start hosting their own like nonprofit Vibe Rise Movement community events. And obviously I said, yes, you want the movement to spread. You want this message to spread. So we'll see if, you know, nobody's committed yet, but I'm open heart to it. So we'll see what happens. I want everything to happen organically as it should, without force. So, but yeah, I invite everybody to get involved in whatever way calls to them.
Oh, wonderful. And I want to thank, while we're at it, Sarah and Joanne and Glenda for joining us, and Keith, I think, is with Glenda, and Melissa Goodblanket is with us, and hopefully
I love you.
On the show soon, talking about her experiences. She sends us a big hello. Tal, of course, thank you for being here. And Joanne when you look at the comments, Joanne has a message for you about Geminis.
Oh,
so just one more time, Chrissy, tell us your Facebook page, because we're about to head out of here.
Sure.
One more time.
It's all one word, Vibe Rise Movement.
Right.
On Facebook. And same thing with the Instagram, all one word, Vibe Rise Movement.
Excellent. Thank you. And for us, it's the Women's Oneness Project. And Chrissy is actually the person that makes all my tech happen, because I am technologically challenged. I wouldn't even be on Instagram, which is if it weren't for her. But it's Women's Oneness, on Instagram, it's Women's Oneness Project. It's the Women's Oneness Project on Facebook. The website is the womensonenessproject.com or womensoneness.com. And my personal email, if you want to send me any personal comments, is Maddi, capital Maddi, at womensoneness.com. So, Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. You bring joy to my heart every time I talk to you. And thank you out there, all of you, for joining us. Please comment, please share. If you enjoyed today's show, please like it. We'd really appreciate it. And I always want to thank Bobby Lacera, my wonderful and amazing producer, who gets the show out to you every day and who's just doing wonderful and beautiful work, giving people a voice at Strong Island Radio and Strong Island Entertainment. And just check it out. There's some beautiful, wonderful shows out there, including Joanne Angelberry Cologne's show. She does a wonderful thing on healing and card reading and all kinds of fun, joyful, uplifting stuff. So thank you all again for listening to us. And as always, peace, love, rock and roll, baby. Bye, y'all.